Former flatmate turns out to be a child molester. This happened a few years ago, so forgive me if I mess up a few details. The flat I was living in was owned by a friend of mine who lived in a different city. I was in charge of making sure the house got looked after and the other flatmates behaved. It wasn't too bad a house, a little bit untidy, 4 bedrooms, down a shared driveway and concealed from the road, in an area of town that was slightly dodgy but relatively okay. It was also my job to show around prospective new flatmates if there was a room available to rent. My friend and landlord would handle rent payments and the like. Anyways, at this point in time, a room became available. However, I was away for a few days on holiday, and the landlord rang and told me 2 guys were keen on the room and wanted to move in immediately without having a look at the room first, which I thought was weird. When I got back to the flat, I find they gave off a dodgy vibe, both in their late 20s, both on the unemployment benefits, scruffy looking and just generally creepy. They also had a computer with them and from what I could see, spent most of their time on Facebook. About 2 weeks after they moved in, they announced they were having some girls over one evening for some drinks, which was fine. However, what the other flatmates and I didn't know was that they were on Facebook messaging random teenage girls, young ones, they didn't know to come over for drinks. And they somehow convinced 2 girls aged about 14 to 15 to come over, which set off major pedophile alarm bells. They stayed for a little while that evening, before thankfully one girl's older sister came round to get them. Whilst these guys were out buying booze, the other flatmates and I pretty much kicked these girls out of the flat for their own safety, and one called her sister to pick them up. These guys were quite annoyed that they had left. I rang the landlord the next morning and told him about the night before, and he gave me the okay to kick these guys out, which they did without too much fuss, thankfully. Needless to say, the flat was a much happier place with them gone. Fast forward a couple months, I'm on my laptop reading local news stories, and I find a story about a guy in his late 20s caught molesting a 5-year-old girl in one of the major libraries in town. I casually mentioned it to my flatmates later on, and was shocked to find out that the molester was one of the 2 guys. One of the flatmates bumped into the other one in town, and he told them about it. Needless to say, it got me thinking about what they might have done to those teenage girls, how we not got them to leave. Additional note, something that I did forget, about 3 weeks after that incident, our flat was broken into at night when we were asleep. Unfortunately, we forgot to lock the front door, stupid of us I know. My flatmate's Xbox was stolen, plus some food out of the freezer. Whoever did it just took stuff out of the lounge and didn't try our bedrooms. The cops never found out who did it, but we reckon it was these 2. We told the cops what had happened to get them kicked out, so they were aware of what sort of people they were. Unfortunate that they couldn't have found them first, and I do regret not calling them sooner. Could have stopped what happened to that poor little girl. Maybe I should be worried. So about 2 weeks ago, I finally kicked out a terrible flatmate. We've been friends when we moved in together back in September, but since January his life has spiraled. He's hooked up with a new girlfriend who was rude to me and bitched about me to him. He got fired from his job, stopped leaving the flat and just lay in bed drinking all the time. He was getting aggressive with me and refusing to return stuff of mine he'd borrowed, searching my room, refusing to pay rent, refusing to clean, etc. I started asking him to leave in February, and it took me threatening to change the locks and telling his friend I was willing to call the police to remove him if I had to before he finally left. When he did leave, he trashed my flat, emptied my freezer of everything he wanted, propped it open so the rest of the stuff there would spoil, and walked out with my wireless router, laptop, projector, and some of my kitchen stuff. His room was an absolute disaster. Bottles of pee on every surface, moldy plates under the bed with the mold actually growing off them and onto the floor. Sheets hadn't been changed in months, and he left everything behind he didn't want, so I'm going to have to arrange for his bed and mattress to be taken to the dump. I thought this sucked, but as I'm pretty sure he's going through some mental issues right now, I thought he'd probably get himself sorted, and I'd get an apology or something 6 to 9 months down the line. I've had people do similar stuff before, and I figured at least it's over. I don't have to deal with this crap now. However, last week I came home for my first day at a new job, by the way, to find a card from the animal protection inspector. Turns out the ex-flatmate had phoned them up and claimed my cat was being abused. She was apparently thin and unfed, living in a filthy flat with broken glass and razor blades all over the floor. I explained the situation to the inspector, and though he won't confirm who made the call, I do manage to get confirmation from someone else who confronted him. I chalked it up as childishness, and pretty much decided that I'm done. Even if he apologizes in the future, I don't think I want anything to do with him anymore. Then Monday morning, about 3 a.m., I get woken up by 3 silent phone calls. Each time I wake up, answer the phone, and no one says anything. I think I hear breathing, but I'm very asleep and not sure. I unplug the phone and it remains unplugged. This has never happened before. The landline isn't the number I give out to people, but of course, ex-flatmate has the number. Tonight's, I can't say this was him. It could have just been someone lost. I think I may be a little paranoid. It just spooked me, but tonight at 2 a.m., I heard someone walk up the stairs of my building. I'm on the 2nd floor of a 3-story building, stop right outside my door, and then just stand there for 4 minutes. Then they turned around and went back down the stairs and out the front door. Again, this has never happened before. I know ex-flatmate is a huge horror movie fan and owns a couple weapons. His machete and his little axe used to sit in our kitchen. I don't think he'll get violent, and so far I have not called the police. I don't think police would help with whatever mental health thing is going on with him right now anyways. I don't think police would take me at all, seriously. Especially as the animal protection guy didn't seem at all bothered about it when I explained he was being used to harass me. And I doubt any of what he's done is actually illegal, except maybe like taking my stuff, which I can't prove as he will likely just deny it. So yeah, if anything else weird happens, I'll update, but for now, advice? The roommates. Okay, so this happened 4 months ago. Just to give you an insight on why I decided to post now, well, here it goes. I have a restraining order on the roommates, and earlier today, I saw them driving damn near too close for comfort towards my house. I still live in the same place. My significant other Kevin and I started working at the same place. We were homeless, and well, our boss had a place to rent and offered it to us and another couple who was also financially struggling, or so we thought. Everything was fine for the first month or so, then it went sour. The female roommate Susan started going, well, let's say just a little bit nutty. At first, Kevin and I accepted it as bitchiness, but as time went on, it got unbearable. So the rent and utilities were split 50-50, groceries purchased separately. While Kevin and I lived in our room for the majority of the time, we kept to ourselves and basically stayed out of the way. Susan thought, since she and her significant other Rick had a child, that they were the main renters and we just had a room. The first thing Kevin and I noticed was our food going missing. The second thing was we were the only ones ever buying supplies and groceries at all. The third was that they would leave their 3-year-old unattended for hours and without asking or notifying Kevin and I. Finally, the fourth thing was that we were only roommates when it came to cleaning up after them. So basically, we were live-in help. There were so many things that have happened, and I don't have enough time to fill it all out, so just try and do one small incident until I get another chance to post again. So it started going sour after Kevin and I stopped providing for them, buying groceries, and stopped cleaning up after them. Susan started demanding things like where we were, what we spent our money on, and that I needed to get off my ass and take care of her family. Rick was also calling our boss and landlord and complaining about how rude we were for staying in our room all the time, etc. So here's the first encounter that kind of, well, freaked me out a little bit. Whenever Kevin wasn't around, Rick would make comments, sexual comments, about my breasts and butt. I blew it off at first as he's just being nice, until he came waltzing into the bathroom not once, not twice, but 3 times. Each time the door was closed, locked, he picked at it, and I just got out of the shower. Luckily, every time I was wrapped in a towel. The last time, though, made my skin crawl. I was out of the shower and I barely wrapped a towel around me when the door flew open. I whip around to see Rick just standing there, staring. I'm speechless. There's no way around him if he decided to do anything at all at that moment. After about a minute of staring, it's like he remembered Susan and Kevin were right outside and could hear me scream if he tried anything. He just turns around and walks away. I'm still standing there hoping Kevin would sense my fear and come running, but he didn't. I told him what happened and he blew it off as an accident. But I'm not sure if it was, right? Let's not meet. Roommate scare. Bear with me, this one's long but worth it. I posted this recently, but I wanted to get it on here as well. Without going into too much detail, my first year in college I stayed in a suite-style room. 2 of us in one room, and 2 in the other, and we shared a bathroom outside our doors. Long story short, by the end of the year, the suite mates and I became great friends, and alienated my roommate of the group. She ended up being racist. We decided that our second year, we would try to get rooms together. We ended up only getting 2 of us in the same room, and the third person had a single. Roommate Cora was my roommate before. Now, Cora smoked a lot of weed. She couldn't go to any class without getting absolutely stoned. Now, I didn't have a problem with this, but I didn't smoke. Roommate Sarah also smoked very little again. The first few weeks of our second year were great. We had a lot of fun, and we were all getting along great. That's until Cora flipped a switch and changed. Completely. The first red flag was when I asked her if she could cover herself when she got out of the shower. She would shower and stay completely naked and walk around the room, and I explained to her how it made me uncomfortable. She was fine with it. I didn't care if she wore a towel, just not, like butt-ass naked in the middle of the day in our tiny room. Next came the weird instances. Sarah came over quite often and slept on the floor between us, and we had a lot of laughs throughout the nights. But one night, Sarah was awoken by someone reaching over her very close, too close, brushing her chest. She froze and pretended she was asleep. She opened her eyes a little while later, and Cora was staring at her in the complete darkness. No phone, just staring wide awake. From here, things went batshit crazy. She would scream at the top of her lungs in the shower, and after, because she couldn't walk around naked, she began to pluck every single pubic hair while laying in her bed under her blankets, making herself bleed. She'd start punching things repeatedly, and overall, she just made the environment extremely hostile. A few weeks of this, and I decided to spend most of my time in the study room down the hall. That was only big enough for one person. Cora and Sarah were in the room, and I see Sarah run frantically to the study room door and asked if she can come in. I was on the phone. I waved her in, and she was in a state of panic. While I was in the study room, Cora had a complete breakdown. She threatened to kill me, and how she was waiting until I got back so she could strangle me. She was throwing things around and speaking horrible things about me and my family so bad that Sarah would not repeat them. She got to the point saying ways she would kill me in my sleep, strangle me while I'm studying, so much so that Sarah was frozen with fear. As soon as Cora left the room and decided to go eat, that's when Sarah ran to me. Apparently, it got to the point that she had her pocket knife in her hand and was pacing back and forth waiting for my return. I ended up having to switch rooms, go to a safe room, and completely change my situation because she wanted to kill me. Sarah and I are still great friends after we both transferred at the end of that year. She decided to see her about a month after I left the room, and Cora had cut Happy into her arm and scarred herself on her upper shoulder, and repeatedly badmouthed the situation like we planned on ruining her life. I don't know what happened to her. There are a few more details I left out for length's sake, but overall, this person became a complete nightmare, almost overnight. Blacked out roommate. Context. So I'm a freshman in college, and I live in a suite with 7 other guys. We all get along quite well with just some minor bumps now and then. I'm closer to one of Andy, less close to Andy's roommate Jack. I'm a tall and thin guy. Andy is bigger than me, but not taller, just a broader guy. Jack is a hockey player, so he's pretty ripped, but shorter than Andy and I. Andy is usually a very relaxed guy. Jack is usually the aggregator. So last night, I got home from a party and was pretty drunk, and my two sweet mates had just gotten back from another party. Andy was blacked out. We danced around the room while I blasted music, and then Andy and Jack left to smoke a joint. I began to FaceTime my girlfriend, and then I heard more knocks on my door. I turned my laptop screen brightness off and shut off the sound. Andy and Jack walk in high as hell, and Annie's still blacked out. Annie begins to get a little aggressive, so I went with it, pushing each other back and forth. Next thing I know, Andy's eyes just went out. He was still looking around, but you could just tell that he wasn't in his mind at all. It was as if he slipped into this odd trance. At that moment, he slams me against the wall and has his hand around my neck, and I'm like, "Hey Andy, that's enough!" But he's not letting go. Jack sees what's up and comes over to coax him away, and Andy is not having any of it. He just got this hand around my neck, pressing me against the wall, and has this death stare looking straight into my eyes. So at this point, I start to freak out a little bit, and I'm really trying to get out of the hold. Eventually, Jack gets him off of me, and I lunge at Andy to push him out of my room once and for all. Andy instantly puts me in this death-like chokehold, where I can feel his arms getting tighter and tighter, and my oxygen supply lower. At this point, I'm terrified and yelling at Jack to get him off of me, and yelling, "I can't breathe!" I don't know how he got off of him, but we were in a bit of a scuffle trying to move Andy out the door. He's getting seriously aggressive, trying to get through Jack's arms to me. I, at this point, jump backwards and lunge for the knife laying on my desk. I pulled out the blade and yelled, "Andy, get the fuck out my room!" I think something clicked in his head that told him knives aren't to be messed with. I won't lunge at him again. I'm yelling at him, and Jack tells me to put the knife away, so I do. And we lunge at Andy again. I've got my arms around his torso, pushing him out the door, and he dumps a liter of Orange Crush on me that was open on the mini fridge right next to us. He then slips and falls into the soda, while Jack grabs his arms. I pushed him out the door, shut it, and promptly locked it. Now Andy is banging on the door, punching the door, yelling at me, "You're a little bitch! Just open the door!" Now I'm not really sure why he's doing this, but like I said, the way he was yelling was like he was in a creepy trance, in which I've only seen him one other time get in. The bang continues, and his body's slamming the door while yelling, "I'm gonna break this door down and fucking kill you!" All the while, he's milling around just between slams and just staring into my peephole. My girlfriend is still on FaceTime and is freaking out so much, understandably, and I'm at the door holding the knife, just pressing the door shut. And he poured more soda under my door, but that didn't really do much other than make my floor sticky. Jack eventually left and stopped trying to get him to leave. About 15 minutes of this, I decided this is enough, and had my girlfriend call public safety and say, "There's a dispute in suite 550, come quickly." 10 more minutes later, pub safety shows up and he instantly complies with them to back away, and sits down in a chair in the common room. I was honestly so goddamn terrified, but I'm glad I was still a bit drunk, because if not, I would have been much more scared. Andy, please get some help, because I'm still a little spooked to leave my door open. Creepy landlord who knew too much. This isn't what I would say this is up to standard to most of the spooky stuff on here, but it's chilling enough since it's something that can't happen to anyone. About 3 years ago, only a couple months after we got together, me and my boyfriend were planning to move out together and had been viewing one-bedroom flats. We'd had some crappy luck and had only managed to find one that had potential, but it was in a converted house and not in a block. The upstairs had been separated from the downstairs, with the hallway being made into a small porch and 2 doors, one leading upstairs to our flat and the other to the ground floor where the landlord lived. We accepted the flat before meeting the landlord. When we did meet him, as he was away while we were viewing the flat, I can only say that first impressions of a person matter. A lot. This whole gut feeling thing is real, and I should have followed it. He spoke very common in the typical, "Yeah mate, I like my pints, you know what I mean," British accents, which irked me from the beginning. He looked strange, with horribly intense, creepy blue eyes. I can't even remember vividly what he looked like, because something about him made me not want to look him in the eye. Well, first meetings and impressions aside, he seemed kind of rough, but was polite and explained the rules to living in the flat. Now before I go on, I want to say how shady this flat was now that I have lived in other flats. The electric meter was run by pound coins, and seemed to be considerably more expensive than what seemed normal. The landlord told us he would come by monthly to collect the money we put inside. Keep in mind, we were only paying for the electricity to run an upstairs of a small house, and it was costing us about £20 a week, the same amount my parents paid for their entire house in the same area. I can't remember how much we paid for gas, but we didn't have a meter. The landlord also told us we would be unable to have internet while we lived there, as it would involve making holes in the walls. The council tax was included in the rent, meaning we gave the landlord our council tax with our rent and he would pay it. Seemed off. It also didn't help that the estate agent conveniently forgot to mention that his wife had died, and that was why he had converted the upstairs. The landlord told us this with no discomfort at all, and I couldn't stop thinking about whether or not I was sleeping in the same room she died in. The first time the landlord confirmed my suspicions of being a bit strange was when we moved in. He told us he had left a sofa in the living room, and that we could do what we want with it, throw it away, or keep it, or sell it. So my parents, needing a temporary sofa, offered to take it off our hands. When my dad and boyfriend were helping put it in the back of his car, the landlord, who had been gardening, started freaking the hell out, saying that it was an anniversary present. A sofa? Okay. And then rather than telling my dad and boyfriend to leave it in the garden for him to find somewhere to put it, he ordered them to carry it around to his garage. Horribly embarrassed, my dad and boyfriend did what he said and let it be. Seems like a silly reason to start hating someone, but just the way he flipped, his behavior, how rude he was about it, how he told us hours before he didn't care what we did with it, and now it was an anniversary present, and how dare we not ask him first? A couple weeks later, we started noticing that he smoked pot. A lot of pot. The porch constantly smelled of it, which was embarrassing for us when guests came over. Disclaimer, I'm not 100% against pot or anything like that, even tried some myself, but the smell can be a bit gross when it's not you smoking it, you know. I didn't think anything of it, but it certainly didn't help my attitude towards him when our entire flat smelled like pot all the time. Another reason he made me uncomfortable, I used to work at a bar for the first few months I lived there, and whenever my dad dropped me off home at 3 a.m., when most of my shifts finished, he would look out his living room window. Creepy shit, seeing his shadow silhouette just standing there while I walked to the front door, no matter what time I came back home. He also never approached me, always talked to my fiancé instead. Early in the morning, when my fiancé had come home from work, the landlord had opened the door to tell him that I was too noisy coming in at night, and that he needed to tell me to be more quiet. This coming from a guy who was doing God knows what downstairs at ridiculous times in the morning. And I know it was a silly thing for the landlord to shout at my partner for, because I tried to be as quiet as I possibly could every night, so he wouldn't wake up and open the door to scare the living shit out of me. Flash forward a few months, I realize I'm pregnant. Me and the fiancé are super happy. We have some friends round one night, and the next day, we go to tell my parents about our pregnancy. Now, but before I go on, I should say that me and my fiancé smoked outside on occasion. When we couldn't be bothered to go outside, I used to smoke outside the bathroom window when my partner was at work during the night shifts, so I didn't have to go out alone and risk encountering creepy landlord. One afternoon, me and my fiancé are cuddling and watching a film together. We hear a knock at the door. It's the landlord, asking to empty the electric meter. Strange, considering he'd only emptied it a week ago, but I couldn't tell my partner since I hid whenever the landlord came in because of how uncomfortable he made me feel. I'm sitting in the living room with the door closed. It was a bit of a mess, and I hear the landlord and my fiancé making small talk, but the landlord doesn't put his ladder up to get to the electric meter. I hear him starting to walk around the flat, his voice irritated and angry, and my fiancé trying to stay formal and polite about the whole situation. I get up to stand near the door and hear better about what's going on. Apparently, my fiancé tells me later, the landlord had decided to do a sudden inspection of the flat. He'd walked directly into the bathroom, and pointed at cigarette ash on the windowsill. Not even hesitating or looking anywhere else, he walks directly into the kitchen and points as the washing up we had done, saying he's not judgmental about the way we live, but it's been there for days. We were pretty unclean people back then. Before he had the chance to go any further, I opened the living room door with our contract in hand and shouted at him, reading out the part that said he wasn't allowed to enter and inspect the flat without 2 weeks' notice. He then said with the biggest shit-eating grin on his face, and technically my boyfriend had let him in, so it didn't count. We argued for a bit, until he blurted out, "When were you going to tell me you were pregnant?" I've always remembered the deathly silence that followed after that, only broken by me. I asked him, How you knew? He told me he'd heard us talking about it. I told him we hadn't talked about it anywhere, and which he might have heard, in case he decided to evict us, knowing we moved out to find a 2-bedroom because of it eventually. He then told us he knew because of my Facebook. My privacy settings on Facebook were set to the absolute max. My fiance didn't allow anyone who wasn't friends with him to see his statuses. Later, when we attempted to look him up, he didn't even have a Facebook account. I told the landlord this, who then changed the story again and said a friend told him. This 40-year-old man, who had no visitors in the 6 months we lived there, had a friend tell him. We got him to leave before we both sat down, freaking the hell out, even more so after realizing he never even bothered to empty the electric meter before he left. So that had never been the reason in which he'd knocked in the first place. I didn't say anything, even though I knew after that the landlord had been coming in when we weren't there. My partner admitted a couple minutes later that the landlord must have been coming in when he wasn't there. He knew where cigarettes ash was on the windowsill straight away. The bathroom window was never open much when I did smoke, since it was restricted by a child lock, and would have looked like steam if he'd had looked up and saw it coming out the window. I also never smoked out of it during the daytime, only at stupid times in the morning, and barely smoked at all. How had he known the washing up had been there for days? Most importantly, how in the hell did he know that I was pregnant? We figured it a way he might have known. At your first midwife appointments, you were given books and leaflets, etc., put inside a folder to bring to other appointments. This sat on my desk in the living room, a room he hadn't entered when doing his surprise inspection. Had he gone through it? We searched for cameras in the smoke alarm and other various places in the flat, but the landlord had done the construction work himself, so we had no way of knowing about any recording hardware without breaking the place apart. We wasn't able to move out until our contract allowed us to. I had to live there for a month in the early stages of pregnancy, above a man who was either entering our flat when we weren't there or recording us. We had evidence in our minds, but nothing solid enough to go to the police. I kept a key in the door every night so he wouldn't be able to use his just in case. Closer to the termination dates of our contract, we wrote official letters to the estate agent explaining the circumstances. We had reason to believe he was entering without our knowledge and recording us, and wrote one official letter to the landlord, posting it through his letterbox. The funny thing, he didn't even confront us about it. Didn't tell us we were making stories up or lying, just ignored us whenever we saw him. We managed to get out of the flat and move into a different one. But you know what the most fucked up part is? We had all these meetings with the estate agent, told them everything that had happened, talk about how dodgy everything to do with the flat was, the electric meter, not allowed internet, etc. And the estate agent even told us he'd talked to the landlord about the allegations and they'd sorted it, whatever that means. Once we'd settled into the new flat, out of curiosity we looked online. The flat was listed under the same estate agent again, knowing that this guy could have potentially been filming and monitoring his tenants. The estate agent still relisted the property. It scares me to this day, knowing that innocent couples like us could be moving in there, not knowing that the person below them can go and come as please, and has no problems doing so, or could be filming them doing all sorts of things. I know this doesn't seem as out there as the other stories on this website, but it's just so real and so likely to happen to anyone, that I figured it'd be a good warning, if anything. The most horrifying thing to me to this day is never knowing what really was going on, and if he hadn't confronted us, how long we would have lived there and not known our home had been violated while we weren't there. So, creepy landlord who I'm still sure, 90% sure to this day, was filming me and my partner during the early parts of our relationship when we were at it like rabbits. I'm not sorry if you saw my big ass or watched me take a shit, and let's not meet. Ever again. Roommate from hell. So I've been browsing this sub for a while, and I find everyone's stories so fascinating. I think about writing traumatic instances as very therapeutic, and I appreciate everyone's courage to post their experiences here. After some thought, I realize I may have one to add to the mix. All names have been changed for being anonymous, and some details may be blurry due to the span of the time and traumatic nature of this scenario. The event in question happened during my sophomore year in college in 2012. I honestly can't remember the exact month, but I believe it was sometime during the winter. I lived with two other girls, Katie and Danielle, and we were the best buds of all time. We had just moved into our first off-campus house, and we were reveling in the freedom of being out of the dorms. With this came some experimentation with drugs and alcohol. The three of us started hanging out and partying with a group of people who eventually got into harder drugs, like cocaine, Molly, etc. Katie and I decided after a while that all this partying was in danger of jeopardizing our health and schoolwork, so we backed off the drugs. Danielle, however, decided to continue experimenting with a variety of drugs with continuing frequency and started getting more aggressive. I should note that I hold no judgment towards drug use whatsoever, but I include it because I believe it may be a crucial component to the events that followed. The saga started on a weekend. Katie, Danielle, and I went to a party one night and got separated from each other. I had made arrangements with the girls to leave the party early, so Danielle agreed to walk with Katie back to the house. We were always adamant about the buddy system at night, especially when we had been drinking, but it failed that night. Instead, Danielle left the party with someone and left Katie to walk home alone at night, and she was unfortunately followed by a strange man. To this day, I deeply regret leaving that night, but I've come to terms with my past decision and taken responsibility for my choice. I came home the next morning and Katie filled me in on the previous night. She was very upset, which is out of character for her. She told me she texted Danielle at some point during the night that she was really bummed she left to walk home alone. Katie was frustrated and her text was blunt, but both Katie and I just figured Danielle would either brush it off or apologize, and things would move on. That didn't happen. Instead, Danielle flipped her shit and became completely enraged. She responded very defensively and told Katie in colorful terms to basically fuck off and get over it. Katie and I thought it was pretty odd and hostile, but just try to carry on with our days and not overthink it. It was Monday, so Katie left the house to go to work on campus, and I went to my afternoon lecture. Sometime while I was in class, unbeknownst to me at the time, Danielle came into Katie's workplace in the student rec center and started screaming at her in front of 60 plus patrons, calling her a boatload of obscenities. She was escorted out of the building by security and somehow made her way back to the house. By the time she arrived at home, I had returned from class and was making food in the kitchen. At this juncture, Danielle's rage was centered on Katie, not me. As I tried to let the two of them work it out without my intervention, Danielle cornered me in the kitchen and told me how angry she was with Katie and what a fucking bitch she was. I'd never seen rage in someone's eyes like that. I refused to engage with her and retreated to my room in the back of the house. I sat on my bed and took some deep breaths while I heard Katie coming up the side yard. She was crying on the phone with her mom, telling her what had just taken place at work. I immediately felt this horrible pit in my stomach, as I knew they were about to confront each other again. The door opened and Katie walked in. I was still in my room, and I heard them start yelling at each other. Katie stood up for herself, telling Danielle she was way out of line, and Danielle retorted with more obscenities. The yelling turned to full-on screaming, and I finally had enough of it, so I went into the living room where Danielle, Katie, and Danielle's mom were standing. I told Danielle to knock it off and leave, to which she told me to go fuck myself. This gave Katie time to try to bolt into her room, but Danielle followed her and slammed Katie's hand in the door as she was trying to barricade herself. I went outside on our front porch, and Katie caught past Danielle and followed me outside. A few seconds later, I heard Danielle's mom scream, "No, Danielle, put it down!" I turned to Katie, and we looked at each other in terror and told her immediately to run away and call 911. At that moment, Danielle flings open the front door holding a giant kitchen knife raised above her head and said something like, "Bitch, I'm going to fucking kill you," to Katie. By this time, all of our neighbors were standing outside, trying to figure out what the hell was going on. I am not a confrontational person, but fuck it if I was going to let someone kill my best friend. So in a split-second decision, I lunged at Danielle and somehow managed to wrestle the knife from her and threw it on the front lawn. I ran to grab it, and during that time, Danielle had gone back inside to grab another knife. This time, she turned it on herself and asked me if I wanted to watch her slit her throat on our porch. Her mother is hysterical, and I kept saying, "No, Danielle, we love you, please don't." At some point, I blacked out, and when I came to, I was running with Katie down the street and into our neighbor's house for refuge. All the while, we could still hear Danielle's blood-curdling screams down the street. We were totally shell-shocked, but bless those guys for taking care of us until the police arrived. We saw the cops showed up along with the crisis units, and they detained her and drove her to the hospital, where she was put on a psych hold. Katie and I never saw Danielle again, and we stayed in our friends for a few weeks before returning to our house once again. We moved out at the end of the year, as it harbored too many somber feelings. I later learned that Danielle may have experienced a psychotic episode triggered by a variety of factors, including stress, recent drug use, and an underlying mental health condition. However, I will never know why she did this. And speculation doesn't matter at this point. It was a huge eye-opener for me to further educate myself about mental health in young adults, as well as appreciate the incredible things your body can do when you're in fight or flight mode. It also taught me to listen to my gut more, as my spidey senses had tingled around Danielle before, but I ignored it. So, Danielle, I sincerely hope you found the help you needed, but let's never meet again.